Nina, my first question is that entire world has copied US dietary guidelines. So, do you think that it is a good idea?
The US Dietary Guidelines is a policy that started in 1980. And basically, that was the first time anywhere in the world that a government decided we need to tell people how to eat. It's not enough that they rely on their own food traditions and their own ways of eating because the immediate cause was that they were worried about the rise, the very part of the obesity epidemic, and also about heart disease, and they wanted to prevent these diseases. So the U.S. government came up with this diet that really, my book describes like all the science before these guidelines came around. But the basic diet was that the idea that we should cut out animal foods, very low in meat, and only low fat dairy, no regular dairy. The idea was to cut down saturated fat, which is in those foods, and then to eat what is essentially a very high grain diet, which is 6 servings of grains per day, and it didn't put any cap on sugar, and then it told also Americans, and then that was transported to the world, to really eat as many fruits and vegetables as possible. So in the end, this was a diet. First of all, it was an absolute dramatic departure from what people were eating at the time. Americans were eating at that point about under 40% of their calories as carbohydrates. And this diet said you must dramatically increase that. And if you look at the obesity epidemic in America, it's quite low. It's below 12% of the population in 1980 when the dietary guidelines started. And then it turns, let me go this way for your audience, and then it goes sharply upwards. In the very same, the upturn is in the same year as the guidelines, and it goes up to where it is today, which is over 42% of the population now are obese, not just overweight, but obese. It's actually 2/3 of the population that is overweight and obese. And I know you have similar problems in your country. So, do I think the dietary guidelines were a good idea? No, I think that there is additional evidence that really shows that this high grain diet, low fat, high grain diet, is not only provokes obesity and ultimately diabetes, but also, as the experts in charge of the dietary guidelines themselves wrote, it worsens your risk factors for heart disease. So this diet that they prescribed actually increased the risk for heart disease. So this is what my group has been, why I founded this group, to try to bring the science to the guidelines, because if you study the guidelines in a lot of detail, you realize, well, there's so much science that they ignore. And we tried very hard to sort of bring the science to them, to say, like, look, here are these studies on what happens when you vastly increase carbohydrates. These are the studies on what happens when you replace saturated fats with polyunsaturated seed oils, or vegetable oils as they're known. And all of this work has been and continues to be ignored. So it's a very hard ship to turn. Let me put it that way. So I should just add that these guidelines are vastly influential. I don't know if that's the same true in India, but in the US, they really are the single most influential policy determining what people eat, through all kinds of government programs like school lunches and breakfasts, and the food that's served to elderly people in nursing homes and the military. And so it's a very influential policy. And that is why, and it teaches all doctors all healthcare workers kind of download the guidelines and then teach that to people. So it really is a problem that we have this misinformation coming down from the very top. Subscribe to BNS Goku Great.